Welcome, let's talk about yet very interesting chapter, and that's the sustainable management of natural resources. Now so far we have seen that over the years when we have evolved, we have been continuously using resources in one form or the other. If you are eating vegetables, you are utilizing something from the plants. If you are having a tube light in your home or any kind of light, you are using an energy, and that's all coming from natural resources. It could be manufactured by the coal from a thermal power plant or from the water through a hydroelectric power plant. But ultimately, everything surrounding us in one form or another is directly or indirectly related to the natural resources around us. So management of these natural resources is very, very important in a sustainable fashion so that it could be used across generations to come. Now we have some brain teasers for you here. If you are able to solve those, you are all set with the chapter. If not, let's proceed. But one of the topics is very interesting, and here it is, that is eutrophication. Now what is eutrophication? Eutrophication actually means that when there is excessive fertilizer which is being used in agricultural area, what happens is the phosphates and the nitrates drain into the water body. When they drain into the water body, the chemicals make the region enriched, the water body becomes enriched, and as a result you have a huge growth of plants on the water body. Now this growth of the plant on the water body cuts the light and the oxygen from the air. As a result, the fishes underneath starts to suffocate and die because of the unavailability of light and insufficient availability of dissolved oxygen that is present. So eutrophication is very, very important. The remaining ones we'll do as we proceed with the chapter. Now in the Earth Veda, which is one of the Mahaupanishads, we say that there is a phrase which is known as Vasudhaiv kutumbakam, which means the entire world or the entire earth is one family, and when we consider that to be one family, we believe that recycling of air, water and soil is very, very important, and we need to conserve and protect the environment in some form or the other. Now a very basic example to start with is the Ganga river, which is considered as one of the mightiest rivers of India, but yet one of the most polluted rivers of India. Now the most of the pollution that is seen is due to the unburned corpses in the Ganga river, and that leads to the higher production of coliform bacteria. This coliform bacteria contaminates the water, and that water affects the water system definitely. So what is the main culprit? Definitely the sewage water going in, the industrial effluents going in, and the unburned corpses which are put into the water bodies are some of the major causes. Now this Ganga action plan was laid down back in 1985 to resolve all these issues. However, since long we have seen that there has been no significant development. So Namami Gange project is started in 2014, and then in 2016 we came up with a national mission for clean Ganga. All these projects, the idea was to rejuvenate the dying river Ganga. Again, this Ganga extends from Gangotri till Sundarban deltas in West Bengal, and this whole stretch of more than 2,500 kilometers is affected by pollutant at each and every level. So by the time it reaches the Sundarban, it is considered as one of the most polluted rivers. So what we need to address is the quality of the water that is flowing in, and quantify the level of pollutions that are into the water body. Now the whole of the issue of environment protection, we can focus that there are 5 R approaches that we can understand. So the brain teaser had the question on 3 R's, so you can pick the 3 R's here. Now the first is refuse, where we say we are banning any type of single-use plastic. By 2022, India claims to curb the use of single-use plastics, and that is where the Prime Minister recently was awarded the UN Championship Award, Champion of the Earth Award. The next is reduce. Reduce means decrease. So as the name suggests, you can turn off the lights when it's not required, turn off the fan when it is not required. So that means you are using the thing in a lesser amount. Reuse means using the things once, twice, thrice and so on. So let's say a Bisleri water bottle you have, and that water bottle you are trying to use it for some other purpose. You are trying to use it again and again. So that is what is reuse. Repurpose, let's say you have a china clay vase and that has a handle. That handle breaks off. Now this thing you can use as a flower pot, you can decorate it, you can use it as a pencil stand, and so on and so forth. So you are doing repurpose. And then next is recycle. So usually when we talk about paper, when we talk about glass, when we talk about plastics, we focus on recycling. That is, the things go into the recycling center and fresh plastic, fresh paper or fresh glass is produced. So all these 5 steps are aimed to conserve the resource and protect the resources for the future generations to come. Our idea is we are linking the economic development with environmental conservation. So that's why we manage our resources. Now when I say managing the resources, it's indeed a very broad question. I can simply say resources are not unlimited. Resources are finite, they are limited, but the population explosion has been very huge. Now to meet this ever-growing population, we have to match the resource consumption. So if we keep on exploiting the resources, definitely these resources would vanish off one day, and when they would vanish off, they won't be available for the future generations to come. So we talk about sustainable development where these resources could last for generations to come. When we talk about the resource base, we say the resources are available for next 40 years, 100 years or so. What about then? So therefore, we focus on alternate viable sources of resources that could be used, for example, solar energy, wind energy, tidal energy. And therefore, we can be able to protect the coal reserves, the petroleum reserves. So that is one thing. The next thing is equitable distribution of resources. That means it should not be that a person who is rich gets more resources as compared to other. The damage to the environment is caused in the process of extraction, and that also affects the environment adversely. So curbing the damage to the environment in the process of extraction is very, very important, and ultimately safe disposal of the waste. So if we talk about India per se, we talk about the Vedic period. During the Vedic period, agriculture was the mainstay of the economy. So most of the things revolved around agriculture. Forests were considered as sacred. You have groves, sacred corridors that were considered, and ethnoforestry was something that was practiced. So our ancient literature had very strong, close-knitted values and sensitivity towards protection of the environment and the nature. And that has been clearly mentioned in Atharva Veda, where it has been said that whenever we dig the earth, we pray for a quick regeneration of the earth. We talk about that we are not trying to damage the habitat and the heart of the earth. Now, when we focus on natural resources, there are 4 major things we would talk about: forest, wildlife, water, coal and petrol. Forest is considered as a biodiversity hotspot. It's a place where you have most of the wildlife. If the forests are destroyed, wildlife is destroyed. Forest is home to a source of numerous raw materials. Let's say tendu making, tendu leaves, you have beedi making, you have paper mills which are all coming from forest. Minor forests produce lac, honey, wax, all of those coming from the forest areas. Then you have fruits, vegetables coming from the trees. So if we cut off the forest, definitely the ecological stability would be affected. With growing urbanization, growing industrialization, forests are the worst hit. So what we need to understand is the huge interest group lobbies that are being created must be accessed, must be checked, and proper direction should be given to the people. The next is wildlife. Now, as I said, once the forests are destroyed, wildlife is destroyed. So forests are essential for the wildlife to survive. Most of the wildlife we say is targeted. Most of the projects for conservation of wildlife are targeted. For example, we have Project Tiger for tigers, Project Rhino for rhino, Project Crocodile for crocodile. But if we talk about a larger scale, the idea is to conserve the forest. In line with that, we have few good examples. You have the Bishnois Community in the western parts of Rajasthan, in the Khejrali village, and they protected the khejri trees. So you have Amrita Devi Bishnoi back in 1731, who died along with more than 350 people who were supporting her for the conservation, and in the memory of that you have the Amrita Devi Bishnoi National Award for Wildlife Conservation that has been given by the Government of India. The next is a very interesting case study of the Great Himalayan National Park. Now this is a reserved area with alpine meadows. You have nomadic shepherds that go into that area in the summers, and the sheep graze the region. Because the sheep graze the region, you have the height of the grass that is maintained. Now once the height is kept smaller, you would have new growth that could be seen. But because of this protection, what happened? The movement of the shepherd was restricted, and as a result the height of the grass grew very much, so new growth could not be registered. So sometimes we also understand that how human intervention adversely affects the protection. Also you have deforestation, urbanization, decentralization, economic growth as some of the major parameters that affect the development of a region. So management of the forest is very, very essential. Chimko Andolan or Hug the Tree movement was started. Now this tree movement, there was a dispute that happened between the local villagers and the contractor. This contractor was given the task of logging into that area, and one day when all the men went to work, only women were there. These contractors thought that this is the best time to cut the forest, but they did not realize that the women would come forward and protect the trees, and this was the Chipko Andolan that started in North India in the Raini Garhwal area back in 1970s. So this was one of the unique example of management of the forest, protection of the forest. Next good example I could say is the Arabari forest area in the regions of West Bengal, in the southwestern part of West Bengal area. Now here most of the sal trees were degraded. You had A.K. Banerjee, who was the forest officer then, and he believed because of the militancy, because of the Naxalites, this region is not growing. So only way you could revive it is through the local participation. So he promoted local participation. He talked about employment if you are trying to protect the trees. He also focused on 25% of the final harvest to be given to the local people, giving them fuel wood, fodder wood at a nominal fees for payment was promoted, and as a result it was within a period of less than 10 years, it was this forest, which was one of the degraded forests, revived, and it had a worth of more than 12.5 crores. So that's how people participation can remarkably bring a significant difference into the system. The next important thing is water. Now water is essential for all basic day-to-day activities. It is essential, but India is a country which is highly dependent on monsoon for the rainfall, and then this monsoon water is protected in the dams, tanks or through the canals, and the minimum requirement for the agriculture, for the household activities is met. So what we need to do is regulate the stored use of water, regulate or bring in optimum cropping patterns. Sprinkler irrigation, drip irrigation are some of the techniques, maintaining the extra leakages that are there into the agricultural fields, and also focusing on local traditional projects. So in Himachal Pradesh there was a project which is known as Khul. Now Khul is a type of canal irrigation. During the planting season, what happens, water is first used by the village which is farthest from the source of the Khul, and then the nearby villages use it. So what happened in this process is managed nicely by the local villagers, but later on the irrigation department took over it, and then all the malfunctioning started to take place, and there was no amiable sharing of the water as it was before. So that's where we need to understand the loopholes and work on those. The next is dams. We have a lot of large dams. Bhakra Nagal is a very good example. You have Sardar Sarovar Dam, yet another good example. These big projects and dams basically conserve water for irrigation, for agriculture purpose, for electricity generation, and for supply of electricity. So all those are being looked about. Along with that, you also have a little of fishery, a little of local activities that could be seen in that areas. Similarly, Indira Gandhi Canal also developed significantly, but the thing was, the regions closer to the Indira Gandhi Canal, there was lots and lots of sugarcane cultivation, paddy cultivation that was seen. But as soon as you move away from it, there was no water. So alkalinity was one of the major issues in the region close to the Indira Gandhi Canal. The other issue was displacement of the local people. So for the construction of these projects, there is lot of displacement of the local people, the tribal people. Sardar Sarovar Dam is yet another important issue. You have Meeta Patkar who has been actively working for it. The idea is if you keep on raising the height of the dam, it would lead to seismic disturbances. It would also lead to displacement of numerous people, cause economic problems, and a large amount of money and profit generation would be affected in this slide. Similarly, you have Tawa Dam, which was again in news. So what we focus on is water harvesting. Now it's not required that only through dams you can have water harvesting or water conservation that could be done, but through the local traditional methods at a local level you could have rainwater harvesting. So whatever water is coming in the monsoon months could be protected. It is called by different names in the different parts of the country. You have Khadin or Nadi in the regions of Rajasthan. You have Katha in the regions of Karnataka. Surangam in the regions of Kerala. You have ponds in the Khandi belt of Jammu region. So those are the different names in the different parts of the country. But the idea remains same. You are trying to conserve the surface water, make the surface water available to the groundwater, so the recharge of the groundwater takes place, the level of the groundwater increases, and finally you have surface water available at least for the coming 6 to 7 months. So Tarun Bharat Sangh by Dr. Rajendra Singh is one of the organizations that has been running for the conservation of water, and in the regions of Alwar you have numerous johars that have been created. He is also awarded as the waterman of the India, and his contribution for the water conservation and water harvesting has been significant. Similarly, you have crescent shaped structures that are built. So from the uphill you can have a crescent shaped structure and a khul here. So all the water here is captured. Now this water would be available for 6 to 7 months, and because of this the groundwater would be recharged, and after the monsoon this region is getting filled, but also it is being protected from any kind of waterborne diseases. You have seasonally flooded gullies which are seen in this region. The next is the coal and petroleum as a reserve or as a natural resource. Now coal and petroleum, the use significantly increased after the industrial revolution. Prior to the industrial revolution, it was not that high consumption that was seen for coal and the petroleum. As of now, we believe we have petroleum resources for next 40 years and coal resources for next 200 years only. So what about the generations after that? There is a big question mark. So the idea is to conserve this natural resource. Now how can we do that? We can move to alternate forms of viable energy. This could be in the form of solar energy, wind energy, tidal energy, and so on. The next is reducing the usage. So we can move for, rather than individual vehicle, you could move for carpooling or a public transport, using LED lights instead of CFL lights, using more sweaters rather than having a heater on during the winter months. Moving with a staircase rather than using lift is another form where you are trying to conserve energy. Now this coal and petroleum are giving us energy, and when we are trying to conserve the energy, we can bring in sustainable growth, we can conserve the resources for the future generations to come. Again, when you have these fossil fuels, how do they develop? They get deposited into the layers, and when they are buried in for years and years, you have the coal that is being formed. We also talk about carbon sequestration in the same form, where now we are trying to artificially put in carbon into the soil and keep it for generations, so that you have coal that would be produced on one end, and on the other end you would have carbon emissions into the atmosphere that could be reduced. Again, we are talking about this carbon that we are using, or this coal or petrol that we are using. When it is burnt, it releases numerous exhaust into the air, and this could be in the form of oxides of nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, and then you would have carbon monoxide, which is one of the toxic gases that is considered, carbon dioxide, which is considered as a greenhouse gases, leading to the rise in the temperature of the region. So the idea is to bring in much more awareness among the people, to decrease the use of the resources that are there, and in light of all this, what we can do is significantly bring in a change into the system. So the sole idea of this chapter is to make the citizens aware about the sustainable management of the existing resources and bring those in line with the future generations to come, so that they can at least avail a happy life. Have a wonderful day ahead.